Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Allie, this is Allie G Reads, and today I am going to talk about my all-time favorite books. These are books that I will lay down and die for. I love these books so much. This is something I'm actually really excited to do, and I'm really excited to share these stories that I haven't talked about. I've talked about some, but you know. Also, I'm in my favorite room of the house, my bedroom. I'm wearing my favorite band shirt. So we have a lot of favorites going on, and I love it. And my favorite person is here, my dog, Buddy. So we just have a wonderful thing of favorites. Hello, Buddy. We gotta feature you. You haven't been featured yet. Love you. So, without further ado, let's get started. By the way, I'm not including any books that I read this year that I've said are like a new all-time favorite. I'm not going to include them in this collection. These are books that some I read last year, and then some I've read like over the years. So I don't really want to include any book that I've read this year in this, because I'm going to do a year-end wrap-up, and then next year I'll do an all-time favorite video again, because things change. Over the years of reflection, things do change. So just want to disclose that. So I'm going to start with like kids books, the ones that I loved from my childhood. But I would still, I would still read these as an adult. The first book from my childhood, The Giver by Lois Lowry. I actually read this in school. It was required reading, grade 6 maybe. Anyway, it's like a middle grade. I think they put it in the teen section though. But basically this is a dystopian novel, and it's about a boy named Jonas, who when he hits the age where you get assigned a career path by the government, and he gets chosen to be the receiver of memory. And so he goes to the giver, who holds all the world's memories, and he now has to take all of it in. This book is extraordinarily graphic for a young adult. It's really, apparently it's a quartet, but I haven't read the other ones. I've only read it as a standalone. There's an ambiguous ending that makes people super mad. And I do remember one memory in particular about war that Jonas receives that really disturbed me, and it really stuck with me. I think this is a brilliant book, and again, adults can read it and enjoy it. It's small, you could fly through it, but this is definitely one of my all-time favorite books ever. I read this book as a kid, and I watched the movie when I was younger, thanks to my mother, and I still love this book. Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. I think this is actually the only book E.B. White wrote for children. I think he actually, or they, is it a he, wrote a book about writing and how to craft a story. I actually own that book as well. This is great. You follow Wilbur, and all the animals on the farm talk, and he loves the little girl. What is her name? Fern. He loves the little girl that rescued him because he was the runt, and it's his kind of adventures with all the farm animals, and Charlotte in particular is the spider. It's just a sweet story, and I do love this book so much still. It's great. This book is my all-time favorite thriller, and probably because it's the first true thriller I read with a twist ending. It's These Things Hidden. I forget the author's name. Insert picture. I don't have my physical copy. My stepmom has it. I think I'm getting it back, but if not, oh well, I'll grab another copy. This might be difficult to find, but I got this book on a whim. I remember I went for a job interview. I was like 18, 19, and I was taking the bus and I was waiting for the bus. So I was in a Walmart, and it was like marked down like 50% off or something in a Walmart. They had a couple of them, and I worked at the bookstore at the time, and I grabbed it and I read it in one sitting. Like, it is a story about a girl, and she's been away at like I think she was in jail. From what I remember, she was in jail, and it's alternating perspectives, and then the twist ending is like, holy crap. It's really, really, really good story. And also, no one talks about it, so it's kind of like hidden. And I went back to the bookstore and we didn't have any copies in, and I made them order copies in, and we could not keep them on the shelf. I recommended it to a bunch of staff. They loved the book. I recommended it to a bunch of clients. They came back and were like, oh my God, do you have any more books like this? And at the time, that was like the first real thriller I read, so I didn't really have any other ones. So that started my search of looking for thrilling books with twist endings. And yeah, so if you can find it or order it, it's worth the buy. I swear, it's good. The author's written other things too, but from what I heard, they're not as good as this one. So standalone. Also, another book, this is more nostalgic for me. I mentioned it briefly in my one of my last videos, The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. People hate these books, but I love this book. I love art history, and I love art, and I can't wait to go to the Louvre one day. And this takes place in Paris and in the Louvre, and it talks about Da Vinci, and it talks about like mysteries around him, and then it talks about the different art and that we never know about certain pieces of art, what was behind them, etc. And I love that about this book. I read this in 3 hours. It does follow a detective. No, he's not a detective. What is he? I think he studies semiotics, or like the study of signs and symbols. Robert Langdon is his name, and he gets requested by the police to come investigate this body that's found in the Louvre. And before the man died, he basically like left a bunch of clues behind so that they could solve what happened to him and lead them on this like conspiracy path. It's really good. It's a good, again, I appreciate the setting. I appreciate the art and the art history. I appreciate like puzzles and all that kind of stuff. And it's great because there are like little puzzles in the book. Like they actually like leave the puzzle and stuff behind, which I love that. So this copy is old as dirt. I think it's like when it first came out. I love this book. I don't care what anybody says. It's nostalgic, if anything, but yeah, 3 hours, easy read. Like, it doesn't take a lot of thought, actually. It moves really fast. It's a fast-paced adventure thriller, so I still love this book. Fuck all y'all. I read this in high school. Required reading. But damn good required reading. 1984 by George Orwell. I don't know when this was written. This copy just has like an amended copyright, 1956. It doesn't have the original publishing date in it, which is kind of shit. But I'll put the date down here. But this ended up like where we got the term Big Brother for that shitty reality show. Sorry. And this really did change like the way we think about surveillance and authoritarian governments, and a lot of stuff ended up kind of coming to reality from this book. The scene, it's very disturbing, and it's so good. I recommend everybody read this anyway. Like, you don't need to say a lot about it. This, I think, is like the OG like dystopian. If I were to take a guess, that would be, yeah, it's so good. And it really stuck with me. It really, really stuck with me. Apparently they did a play in New York recently of this. And I think Olivia Wilde was in it, but there's a scene, like a traumatic scene that happens, and it was acted so well on stage that people were actually like, the audience was like running out and throwing up and passing out because it was so intense. And you do kind of get this like anxiety reading it. So this is still, I don't even really like dystopian, but this just is phenomenal. So definitely you have to read it at least once in your life. Okay. This is a weird book. It's very weird. I don't think a lot of people will like it, but you might. It's kind of like a cult book. I think it's one of the first cult books that I really read and loved. It's called Filth by Irvine Welsh. Irvine Welsh is more notably known for Trainspotting, but this book is so good. It's so weird. You're following a cop in Scotland. Yeah, I think it's Scotland. You're following a cop in Scotland, and he's telling a story about just how he's so like into like drinking and drugs, and he's losing his mind slowly. But the interesting thing about this and why it's written in a very odd way. And as you go through the book, you see these kinds of things in the middle, and I'm not going to spoil what it is and why this is there, but it makes for a very unique reading experience. And there is a movie adaptation which was pretty good, but you lose that part in the movie. So I remember reading it being like, what the hell am I reading? And it's such a weird book, but it's really good, especially if you're into weird fiction. This is one of them, and one of the most uniquely written stories I've ever read. Also, King doing suspense thrillers. Geralds Game. This is such a good, and I'm going to say it's like a thriller because it's kind of weird, but it's not a horror. So this couple, their marriage is kind of getting stale and falling apart, and they go to this remote cabin for the weekend. And the husband wants to kind of try to spice things up. So he handcuffs his wife to the bed, and he ends up having a heart attack and dying. And now she is stuck, handcuffed to the bed with no escape. And you're following her narrative, trying to come up with ways to get out, not to lose her mind, and not to die stuck to this bed. It's really good. It's really suspenseful. I think it's one of King's best books. I never forgot it when I finished it, and I read this when I was a teenager, and it's fucking amazing. And also the Netflix adaptation is phenomenal as well. So definitely put it on your list. And no one talks about this one, which is weird because it's so good. I think this, like, more people talk about Misery as like a suspense one, but this one is very suspenseful as well. So same kind of setting, closed room. I love this. I talked about this in a video before, so I'm not going to say too much about it. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I'm on an Agatha Christie binge right now. I haven't found a bad one, but I've found like one more that I think will be an all-time favorite, maybe, so far. But this one, none has compared to this, and how incredible of a closed room mystery this is. This book is so good, and it's still, I've read it in one sitting. It stands above the rest still, I think, and majority of people would like this over the other one. So just read it. It's amazing. Just read it. I think this is the only sci-fi book that I really, really, really love. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This is actually quite funny, and it reminds me of like British humor at its best. There's like a depressed robot, and like, he's just so bitter through the whole book. Yeah, I love this book. It's weird. It's weird as hell. I haven't read the rest of them. I know it's like a series, but I think if you're into like weird books and light sci-fi, this would be a good one because it's very humorous. I'm not going to say too much about it because there's been tons of adaptations and everything, but I just think that this is one of those books that's super weird, and I love it so much. So definitely check this one out. Teeny books here. This is a little bit different from his other books, The Constant Gardener by Jean le Carré. John le Carré is more famously known for espionage stories. This was adapted into a movie, so some people might know it, but oh my God, this book is actually based on a true story, like a true conspiracy, which is actually, I mean, it's not a conspiracy anymore, it was proven, but it's based on this pharmaceutical company that did some really shitty things. Anyway, this woman, Tess, is married to a man named Justin, and he is a British diplomat, and they're in Africa, and she starts to kind of get wrapped up in this conspiracy, and her husband's just telling her like it's nothing, like just stay out of it, and then she ends up being murdered. And then Justin is he's this more calm force to Tess, and he ends up getting roped up into finding out what happened to his wife and why his wife was murdered. And their relationship is beautiful, and I love this book. It's a slow burn, I'm gonna say. It's a slow burn, so you have to kind of be patient with it. But Jean le Carré is an incredibly beautiful writer, and it was different from his espionage stories, and I love this book so much. And they're one of my favorite like relationships, Justin and Tessa. So Tessa, yeah. So read it, love it. It's incredible. It's really, really, really amazing. Also, one of my all-time favorites, which everybody should read, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This is a super small book, and it's a really good classic, and it's incredible. And I like the movie too, but the book it does something to you. I love this story. This story is so friggin' sad. I'm not going to say too much about it because I think a lot of people know what Of Mice and Men is, but it's a great friendship story, and it's so sad, but it's worth a read. It's beautiful. I promise. It's beautiful. This is going to be a long ass video. I'm sorry. I realize I have far too many favorite books, and I'm sorry, but fuck. I'm trying to fly through them as fast as I can. A book I read last year, it's technically a horror, but I don't really think it is. Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This book is amazing. You don't know what it is until it reveals itself. Like, you think it's going one way, and then it goes a totally different direction. I love the misdirection in this story. I love the imagery. It's a hefty one, but I have not stopped thinking about it since I read it last year. That's how good it is. Basically, this boy lives with his single mother, and he goes missing into the woods for 6 days, and he comes back more intelligent than he was, and he starts speaking of this imaginary friend that has asked him to build a treehouse, and you don't know why, in the woods behind their house. You don't know why, and then all this weird shit starts happening. It's phenomenal. At the core of this is a mother and son story, and it is amazing, and I love this so much. So you won't realize how long it is when you're reading it. It doesn't feel long when you're reading it, but it's amazing. I think I read it in 2 days. So good. Another all-time favorite of mine is weird as fuck. There's clearly a theme here of weird books. The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. Such a weird book. But I read it last year, and I never stopped thinking about it, and it's one of my all-time favorite books. This is translated from Russian. Basically, like, the devil shows up in Moscow and wreaks havoc, and you're getting another perspective of him back in time, telling the story of the crucifixion of Jesus from a different kind of view. And there's some demons that are with him, and they're weird. There's a smoking, drinking cat who talks and walks on his hind legs. It's friggin' weird. It's so weird, but it's brilliant if you're into weird fiction. But I recognize that not a lot of people would be, but it's still one of my all-time favorites. I have to mention it. Book I read last year that, again, did the same thing, stuck with me since I read it. Docile. I mentioned this in my best of 2020. It's one of my all-time favorite books. This is a dystopian story about you inherit all your family's debt as the generations go down, and eventually it has to be paid off. And you can go into this debt repayment program, and you become a docile, basically a slave for ultra rich people. And this has a lot of social commentary about debt, about society, about consent, about free will. This is incredible. So if you want a book that makes you think and is disturbing but in a different way, this book is incredible. It's so good. I love it. Never stop thinking about it. It totally blew my mind. So please read it. Not a lot of people are reading it, but it's worth it. How could I not mention Frankenstein? And this cover of this edition I have is so beautiful. Classic, written by Mary Shelley. Fun fact, when I was in New York City, my friend and I went to the JP Morgan Library Museum, and we actually saw this exhibit where they had the original first draft of Frankenstein that Mary Shelley wrote by hand. Blows your mind. It was incredible to see. This is different from the movie. However, the movie is one of my favorites of all time as well, as far as classic movies go. But it is different, and they're different in different ways. But the ultimate, I think, theme of this book is, who are the monsters? Amazing book. And for a classic, the language is very simple and very easy to read. So I love this one. Amazing. We are coming to the end, I promise. Another book I read, which is kind of a slow burn, and I don't really know how to describe, put this in a genre. The Bellwether Revivals by Benjamin Wood. I think this is the only thing he ever wrote. It's brilliant, though. Basically, this is about a man, and he ends up meeting this girl, and he quickly is interested, and she brings him around. She's super wealthy. She brings him around her family, and specifically her brother, and this group of friends that they have. And her brother is this genius that believes in his music ability so much that he believes that he can actually heal people with his music. And shit goes south fast. I don't know how to classify this. It's a slow burn mystery, maybe? No. Suspense? It's weird, but it's really brilliant. It's crazy. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just shit goes so fast, and it's dark and kind of psychological. So if you're into that, give this a try. It might not be for everybody, but it's amazing. All right, we're getting to my all-time favorites. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6. These are my all-time favorite books. I recommend to everybody all the time. And here's why. I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. Holy shit. This book is by a Canadian author. We love that. This is about a couple, and they're like a fairly new couple. And she agrees to go to this remote farmhouse I've talked about this in I don't know how many videos. She agrees to go to this remote farmhouse and meet his parents for the first time, and things start getting weird. But she's also being taunted and harassed by these like very creepy phone calls. This book is the best psychological thriller I've ever read. I don't care about the other ones. I know that's controversial because it's a fairly recent story. This is the best psychological thriller ever. This is one of the best suspense stories ever. I love this, and this gave me the creeps while reading it. I read it in one sitting and I was blown away by the ending. I know a lot of people that have read this as well, and they say the same thing. However, the movie, oh, I hate that movie. I hate it. I'll rant about that another time. But don't. Just read the book. It's incredible. It's so good. I think people put it in horror videos as well because it does invoke this like creepiness, but it's actually not horror. Psychological thriller. Yes. Amazing. I've talked about this book so many times, and like, because I keep reading, this is like a new trend that's coming up, and I keep reading books about it, and I don't really like any of them. The Bad Seed by William March. Oh my God. This is like the original one. It came out in the 50s. He passed away shortly before this was published, and this is, I think, the thing he's known the best for. This follows Rhoda Penmark, and she is an evil child, and her mother is starting to lose her mind. Oh my God. Especially for the 50s. This book is dark. It's really good. It's not that big. It's amazing. And the black and white movie of it is also amazing. And actually, John Waters, this is like his favorite book as well, the director. This book is incredible, and it does have like a twist ending, and it's amazing. It still stands up, and if you read this, you'll understand why I don't like every evil child book that comes after it, because I don't think that anyone can do it the way this book is done. So amazing. One of my all-time favorites ever. Also, one of my all-time favorite books is the horror Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Holy shit. This book is amazing. This is, I think, his best work ever. Still. Stephen King didn't want this published because he thought it would be too dark. And oh my God. The movies are shit. Both adaptations. But oh my God. This is so amazing. It's again, one of the scariest things I've ever read. Genuinely gave me the creeps. Like, I remember reading it and being like, oh my God. And it took me forever to get my hands on this original cover. I finally did it, and it's worth it. So it's truly, I think, the scariest thing Stephen King did right. It does leave you creeped out for sure. It's amazing. I stand by this book, and it's not as like wordy as his other books. Incredible book. So good. I put this in my best of 2020 last year. The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Oh my God, this book is so beautiful. This is a historical fiction novel. I can't wait to watch the movie adaptation. I really hope that they do a good job. This is set in World War II in France, and it's about these two sisters, and they're very different, and how they cope with the war resistance in their own ways. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's so amazing. It's so emotional. I love this book. This is one of I think, the best historical fiction I've ever read. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, yes, please read this. It's so good. And it's a great story about the war that I didn't get to read. So I love it. It's incredible. I also talked about this in my 2020 best of, and I hate that I waited so long to read this. Nutshell by Ian McEwan. Weird book, but beautiful. Unreliable narrator. This book is told from the perspective of a baby in the womb, and his mother is plotting to kill his father, and he is kind of telling us what's happening. It's actually a really good suspense story. It's really suspenseful, and you want to know what's going to happen to these people and this baby, actually, because it's really shitty what's happening to the baby while you're like hearing about this. But it's phenomenal, and it stays in your brain, and I never forgot this book, and I love this book so much. It's short, it's, oh my god, weird, but amazing. So good. Love this one. And finally, normally when people ask me what my all-time favorite book is, or like give me 2 favorite books, I give Pet Sematary in this one. Atonement by Ian McEwan. This is one of the best twist endings ever. You don't expect there to be a twist ending in this book. This is a historical fiction. Oh my god. This I think takes place for the First World War. No, 1935, sorry. And it's about this family, and this little girl, Bryony, is telling the story, and she wants to be a writer. And one day she witnesses something that she thinks she sees and tells the police what happened. And this ends up being the ripple effect of what she did, and her trying to, all these years, atone for what she did. Oh, beautiful book, beautifully written. McEwan writes really dark shit usually, and he was writing really dark stuff until this book. This brought him a whole new audience and put him on the map. This is probably, oh my god, it's amazing. I remember like gasping when I read the end. The movie adaptation is also really well done, but I recommend reading the book because there's that moment when you get to the end of the book, and I love this so much. It is my favorite ever, and I think everybody should give this a read because, like I said, you think it's one thing, and then it turns into like a love story, and then it turns into like this like historical fiction, and then it turns into something else. It's just like, oh my god, it's amazing. And his writing is lyrical. It's so beautiful. I love this. He's my favorite author, and I definitely think everybody should read this at least once. Love it. And that's it. I'm sorry this is such a long video, but I had a lot of favorite books. So please let me know if you've read anything. If you know a book is similar to any one of these, please let me know. I'm always looking for new books that are similar to ones that obviously I love. Please let me know if you agree, if you read one after I recommended it, what you thought. I love talking books about people, with people, so yay. Please like, comment, and subscribe to see more, and I don't have an exit.